The debriefing session at Forward Operating Base Chapman was unlike any Morrison had experienced in his career. Intelligence officers, special operations commanders, and even representatives from various government agencies attended the session. The existence of an unidentified sniper providing tactical support to American forces had triggered immediate and intense interest from multiple organizations. Morrison provided a detailed account of the engagement, emphasizing the precision and tactical awareness displayed by their unknown ally. The frequency and accuracy of the supporting fire suggested military training at the highest levels. However, the geographic knowledge and timing required to position effectively for their support implied extensive local intelligence and preparation. Rodriguez and Murphy provided additional details about the marksmanship they had observed. Shots consistently exceeding 800 meters with apparent first-round hits on moving targets represented skill levels achieved by only a handful of military marksmen worldwide. The psychological effect on enemy forces had been as important as the physical casualties, disrupting Taliban coordination and morale at critical moments. Chun presented his analysis of the tactical communications intercepts he had gathered during the engagement. Taliban radio traffic revealed confusion and growing fear about the unseen sniper. Enemy commanders had attempted to coordinate counter-sniper operations, but were unable to locate or effectively engage their mysterious opponent. Several Taliban units had withdrawn from combat entirely rather than continue facing the unknown threat. The intelligence value of their mission extended beyond the weapons cache they had originally been tasked to investigate. The Taliban staging area represented a significant threat to coalition operations in the region. However, the presence of an unidentified sniper with apparent pro-coalition sympathies presented both opportunities and security concerns that required careful consideration. Major Sarah Chun, the base intelligence officer, presented her preliminary analysis of possible explanations for their mysterious benefactor. The most likely scenarios included a NATO Special Operations team operating under different command authority, a local Afghan fighter with military training and anti-Taliban motivations, or possibly a private contractor with specialized skills and independent agenda. However, each of these explanations faced significant problems when examined closely. No NATO units were supposed to be operating in that sector, and coordination protocols should have prevented unknown friendly forces from engaging in the same area. Local fighters with the required skill levels were extremely rare, and those who possessed such abilities were usually known to coalition intelligence services. The possibility of a private contractor raised additional concerns about unauthorized operations and potential violations of international law. Military contractors operating without proper authorization could create diplomatic incidents and compromise ongoing operations. However, the level of support provided to Morrison's team suggested someone with legitimate interest in coalition success rather than hostile intent. Washington provided detailed observations about the tactical effectiveness of their supporters' fire. The unknown sniper had demonstrated not just exceptional marksmanship, but sophisticated understanding of small unit tactics and battlefield psychology. Target selection had been precise and deliberate, focusing on enemy leaders and crew-served weapons operators while creating maximum disruption to Taliban coordination. The investigation into their mysterious ally's identity began immediately following the debriefing. Satellite imagery from the engagement period was analyzed for signs of human activity in the suspected sniper positions. However, the mountainous terrain and natural concealment made detection extremely difficult, even with advanced imaging technology. Intelligence databases were searched for individuals with the required skill sets operating in the region. Former military personnel, known private contractors, and local fighters with specialized training were all investigated. However, the search parameters were necessarily broad, as the level of capability demonstrated could have been acquired through various military or civilian training programs. 3 days after the engagement, a breakthrough occurred when local intelligence assets reported unusual activity around a remote village approximately 10 kilometers from the battlefield. Villagers described the presence of a stranger who had appeared shortly before the Taliban operation began and disappeared immediately afterward. The individual's description was vague, but several details caught the attention of intelligence analysts. The mysterious visitor had been described as tall and lean, carrying what appeared to be a high-end rifle case. More significantly, the individual had spoken fluent Pashto with a local dialect, but had mannerisms and equipment that suggested foreign military training. Village elders had noted that this person had asked detailed questions about Taliban movements and activities in the valley. Morrison volunteered to lead a reconnaissance mission to investigate this lead personally. His team's survival depended on their mysterious protector, and he felt a personal obligation to determine the identity of the person who had saved their lives. The mission was authorized with strict instructions to gather intelligence while avoiding any actions that might compromise the unknown individual's security. The village investigation revealed additional details about their mysterious benefactor. Local shopkeepers remembered selling supplies to the stranger, including food, water, and camping equipment suitable for extended operations in mountainous terrain. The individual had paid in American currency, but had demonstrated extensive knowledge of local customs and geography. Most significantly, the village's retired police chief recognized the visitor's rifle case as belonging to a precision shooting system used by advanced military forces. However, he also noted that the individual's behavior and appearance suggested someone comfortable operating independently in hostile territory. This combination of military equipment and civilian operational methods presented an intriguing puzzle. The investigation expanded to include analysis of entry and exit routes that the mysterious sniper might have used. The mountainous terrain offered numerous approaches to the suspected firing positions, but most would require extensive local knowledge and advanced mountaineering skills. Intelligence analysts began mapping potential routes and identifying choke points where surveillance might detect future activities. Murphy conducted a detailed ballistic analysis of the enemy casualties they had observed during their withdrawal. The wound patterns and bullet trajectories provided additional clues about their protector's position and capabilities. The consistency of shot placement suggested a marksman capable of making precise calculations for wind, elevation, and target movement under combat conditions. 2 weeks after the initial engagement, a second incident occurred that provided additional insights into their mysterious allies' identity and motivations. Another coalition patrol was ambushed in the same general area, and once again, precise sniper fire from an unknown source disrupted the enemy assault and allowed the patrol to withdraw successfully. This second engagement was observed by a reconnaissance drone that happened to be conducting surveillance in the area. The footage revealed muzzle flashes from a position that would have been impossible to reach without extensive preparation and local knowledge. More importantly, the timing and precision of the shots demonstrated the same tactical awareness that had saved Morrison's team. Intelligence analysts studying the drone footage made a crucial observation about the shooting position used during the second engagement. The location was different from the suspected position during Morrison's mission, but it offered similar tactical advantages and required similar local knowledge to access. This suggested that their mysterious protector had prepositioned multiple hides and was familiar enough with the terrain to move between them undetected. The pattern of support provided to both coalition units revealed additional information about their unknown allies' capabilities and priorities. In both cases, the sniper had focused on disrupting enemy coordination while minimizing coalition casualties. The tactical choices demonstrated not just military training, but specific familiarity with coalition tactics and priorities. Colonel James Martinez, the Regional Special Operations Commander, authorized an expanded investigation into the identity and motivations of their mysterious protector. The individual's consistent support for coalition forces suggested friendly intent, but unauthorized operations in the area created potential security risks that needed to be addressed. The investigation team included specialists in human intelligence, signals intelligence, and behavioral analysis. Each discipline contributed unique perspectives on the available evidence, building a comprehensive profile of an individual whose skills and knowledge suggested extensive military training combined with intimate familiarity with local terrain and culture. Behavioral analysts noted that the unknown sniper's target selection and Engagement patterns were consistent with someone who understood the psychological aspects of combat, as well as its physical dimensions. The timing and placement of shots had maximized their impact on enemy morale while conserving ammunition and maintaining concealment. These decisions required tactical sophistication beyond basic marksmanship skills. 6 weeks after Morrison's original mission, a significant development occurred when local tribal leaders approached coalition representatives with information about their mysterious protector. The individual had been operating in the region for several months, providing security for villages threatened by Taliban activities while carefully avoiding contact with coalition forces. The tribal intelligence revealed that their unknown ally was a former military operator who had remained in Afghanistan after completing an official deployment. Personal motivations related to local connections and anti-Taliban sentiment had driven the decision to continue operating independently. However, the individual had maintained strict operational security to avoid compromising coalition activities or creating diplomatic complications. Morrison was authorized to attempt direct contact with their mysterious protector through tribal intermediaries. The approach required careful coordination to avoid compromising the individual's security while establishing communication that could benefit ongoing coalition operations. The potential intelligence value of someone with such intimate local knowledge and proven tactical capabilities was enormous. The first contact attempt occurred through a trusted tribal elder who agreed to serve as an intermediary. The message was simple. The coalition forces whose lives had been saved wanted to express their gratitude and explore possibilities for ongoing cooperation. However, the approach emphasized that any cooperation would respect the individual's independence and security requirements. 3 days later, Morrison received a response through the tribal network. Their mysterious protector agreed to a single meeting, under conditions that would protect both parties while allowing face-to-face communication. The location and timing were carefully chosen to minimize security risks while demonstrating good faith on both sides. The meeting took place at dawn in a remote valley known to be free of Taliban activity. Morrison arrived alone, as requested, carrying only basic personal weapons and a radio for emergency communication. The precision of the meeting arrangements and security protocols demonstrated the same tactical sophistication that had characterized their protector's combat performance. When Morrison first saw their mysterious ally, many questions were finally answered. The individual was a former Special Forces operator who had served multiple tours in Afghanistan before choosing to remain in the country for personal reasons. Marriage to a local woman and deep connections to tribal communities had motivated the decision to continue fighting Taliban forces independently. The conversation revealed the depth of local knowledge and tactical capability that had made their survival possible. Years of experience in the region had provided intimate familiarity with terrain, weather patterns, and enemy tactics. Combined with advanced military training and personal motivations, these factors had created a uniquely effective independent operator. Their protector explained that the decision to support Morrison's team had been based on immediate tactical considerations rather than long-term planning. However, the successful cooperation had demonstrated the potential value of limited coordination between coalition forces and independent operators with compatible objectives. Morrison proposed an informal arrangement that would allow occasional coordination while preserving independence and security for all parties. Communication protocols were established that would allow information sharing about Taliban activities while maintaining operational security. The arrangement would be unofficial but could provide valuable tactical advantages for coalition operations. The agreement represented an unconventional solution to the challenges of operating in Afghanistan's complex political and military environment. Independent operators with local knowledge and proven capabilities could provide intelligence and support that traditional military structures might not be able to access. However, such arrangements required careful management to avoid security breaches or diplomatic complications. As Morrison returned to his base, he reflected on the extraordinary events that had saved his team's lives and led to this unlikely alliance. Their mysterious protector had proven that individual skill, determination, and local knowledge could make decisive differences in modern asymmetric warfare. The precision shots that had saved their lives had created possibilities for cooperation that might benefit coalition operations throughout the region. The final mission reports emphasized both the tactical success of their survival and the intelligence value of their new informal alliance. However, Morrison knew that the most important outcome had been the survival of his team and the opportunity to continue their mission of protecting coalition forces and supporting Afghanistan's development toward stability and security. Morrison made the decision to begin their tactical withdrawal while the mysterious sniper continued to disrupt enemy coordination. The team moved in pairs, using overwatch techniques that allowed them to maintain suppressive fire while relocating to more defensible positions. Murphy and Rodriguez moved first, establishing a new firing position 50 meters down the ridge, while Washington and Chun provided covering fire. The withdrawal was complicated by the terrain and the continued presence of enemy forces on multiple sides of their position. However, the unknown sniper seemed to anticipate their movement, systematically eliminating threats that would have made their retreat impossible. Taliban fighters attempting to establish blocking positions along the ridge were neutralized before they could effectively engage the withdrawing SEALs. As they moved, Morrison caught glimpses of the sniper's work through his own optics. The shots were coming from what appeared to be a natural rock formation approximately 1,400 meters from their original position. The location provided excellent concealment and commanding views of the entire valley, but would have required extensive local knowledge to identify and access. Chun maintained intermittent radio contact with their command post, providing updates on their tactical situation and estimated time to the extraction point. The air support was still 30 minutes out, but Morrison knew they might not survive that long without continued assistance from their unknown ally. The second phase of their withdrawal took them across a section of open ground that would normally be considered impassable under fire. Taliban positions on the opposite ridge had clear fields of fire across this area, and Morrison had initially planned to find an alternative route. However, the mysterious sniper had systematically eliminated every Taliban fighter who had attempted to establish positions overlooking this crucial terrain. As Murphy crossed the open area, he observed muzzle flashes from at least 3 different Taliban positions that were immediately answered by precise counter-sniper fire. The enemy shooters were eliminated so quickly that they never had the opportunity to engage the moving SEALs. The level of situational awareness and tactical support being provided was unlike anything Morrison had experienced in his 15 years of military service. Washington provided overwatch from their previous position while the rest of the team crossed the danger area. Through his machine gun's optics, he observed Taliban fighters attempting to coordinate a flanking maneuver that would cut off the SEALs' retreat route. However, before he could engage these targets, they began dropping one by one to precisely placed shots from the hidden sniper. The enemy's confusion and growing demoralization became increasingly apparent as the withdrawal continued. Taliban fighters who had initially shown aggressive coordination were now hesitant to move or establish firing positions. The psychological effect of facing an unseen marksman was devastating their tactical cohesion and allowing the outnumbered SEALs to maintain their fighting withdrawal. Rodriguez, serving as the team medic, noted that several of the enemy casualties he observed showed signs of being killed by extremely precise shots. Head and upper torso hits at ranges exceeding 800 meters suggested a level of marksmanship that bordered on legendary. These weren't lucky shots or suppressive fire. Each round was deliberately placed for maximum effect. As the team reached their third rally point, Morrison attempted to establish visual contact with their mysterious benefactor. Using high-powered optics, he scanned the area where the supporting fire seemed to be originating. However, the sniper's position was so well concealed that even with precise knowledge of the general location, Morrison could detect no signs of human presence. The tactical situation continued to evolve in their favor as the unknown sniper maintained relentless pressure on enemy forces. Taliban fighters attempting to pursue the withdrawing SEALs found themselves under constant threat from precision fire that seemed to come from nowhere. Several enemy groups abandoned their pursuit entirely after losing multiple members to the mysterious marksman. Shin managed to establish clearer communication with their command post and was able to provide detailed coordinates for their current position and planned extraction point. However, when asked about the nature of the supporting fire they were receiving, Morrison found himself at a loss for explanation. Standard operating procedures required detailed reports of all friendly forces in the area, but no other NATO units were supposed to be operating in this sector. The fourth phase of their withdrawal took them through a narrow canyon that offered both concealment and significant tactical risk. Taliban forces could easily establish blocking positions at either end of the canyon, trapping the SEALs in a killing field. Morrison had initially planned to avoid this route entirely, but the continued pressure from their unknown ally had forced enemy fighters away from alternative paths. As they entered the canyon, Murphy took point while Morrison brought up the rear. The team moved in tactical column formation, maintaining spacing to minimize casualties from potential ambushes. However, what should have been the most dangerous part of their withdrawal proceeded without significant incident, suggesting that their mysterious protector had already cleared the area of threats. Halfway through the canyon, Rodriguez discovered evidence of recent combat that hadn't been visible from their approach. 3 Taliban fighters lay dead from precision rifle shots, their weapons and equipment still in place. The accuracy of the shots was remarkable. Each man had been killed instantly by single rounds placed with surgical precision. Washington examined the enemy casualties and noted that their wounds were consistent with high-velocity rifle rounds, likely .308 or similar caliber. The lack of multiple wounds on each body confirmed that their unknown ally was achieving one-shot kills at considerable distance. This level of marksmanship required not just exceptional shooting skills, but intimate knowledge of ballistics, wind conditions, and target behavior. The team's ammunition situation was becoming critical as they approached their planned extraction point. Each man was down to less than 2 full magazines, barely enough ammunition for another significant engagement. Morrison knew that without continued support from the mysterious sniper, they would be virtually defenseless if the Taliban managed to coordinate another assault. As they emerged from the canyon, Chen received an update from their command post. The inbound air support had been delayed by weather conditions at their forward operating base, pushing their estimated arrival time back by an additional 20 minutes. This news added urgency to their withdrawal, as maintaining their current pace was essential to avoid being overtaken by pursuing enemy forces. The extraction point was located on a relatively flat plateau that offered excellent landing zones for helicopters, but poor defensive positions for ground forces. Morrison had chosen this location based on the assumption that they would have air cover during extraction. However, their current situation meant they might have to defend this position with minimal ammunition against unknown numbers of enemy fighters. Murphy established an overwatch position on slightly higher ground while the rest of the team prepared the landing zone for their extraction. However, as they worked, Taliban fighters began appearing on the ridges surrounding the plateau. The enemy had managed to coordinate their pursuit despite the continued harassment from the unknown sniper, and they were once again beginning to surround the SEAL team. Morrison counted at least 30 enemy fighters visible on the surrounding high ground, with more likely hidden from view. His team's ammunition situation made prolonged resistance impossible, and their extraction aircraft was still 15 minutes out. The tactical mathematics had once again shifted against them, despite the mysterious sniper's continued support. However, as Taliban fighters began positioning themselves for a coordinated assault on the plateau, the unknown marksman's fire intensified dramatically. Enemy fighters attempting to establish firing positions were eliminated almost as quickly as they appeared. Machine gun teams attempting to set up their weapons found their operators dropping before they could complete their preparations. The precision and frequency of the supporting fire suggested that the sniper had moved to a position with better observation of the extraction zone. Morrison estimated that shots were being fired at intervals of 15 to 20 seconds, each one eliminating a specific threat to the team's security. The level of tactical support was extraordinary, far beyond what could be expected from casual opportunistic shooting. Chen established contact with the inbound extraction aircraft and began providing detailed updates on the tactical situation. The helicopter pilots needed to understand that they would be landing in a hot zone with active enemy contact. However, Morrison also needed to explain the presence of friendly sniper fire without compromising operational security or revealing information he didn't fully understand himself. As the sound of approaching helicopters became audible, the Taliban assault intensified. Enemy fighters attempted to rush the plateau from multiple directions, hoping to overrun the SEAL position before air support could arrive. However, the mysterious sniper's fire became even more devastating, creating gaps in the enemy assault that allowed Morrison's team to concentrate their limited firepower more effectively. Washington positioned his machine gun to cover the most likely avenue of approach, while the rest of the team established a defensive perimeter around the landing zone. However, their ammunition levels were so low that sustained resistance was impossible. Everything depended on the timing of their extraction and the continued support of their unknown ally. The first helicopter appeared over the ridge at exactly the moment when Taliban fighters began their final assault on the plateau. The aircraft immediately began engaging enemy positions with door-mounted machine guns, adding its firepower to the defensive effort. However, the helicopter was also vulnerable to enemy fire and needed to land quickly to minimize exposure. As the aircraft approached the landing zone, the mysterious sniper's fire reached a crescendo of activity. Enemy fighters attempting to engage the helicopter with rocket-propelled grenades found themselves under immediate and devastating counterfire. Anti-aircraft positions that might have threatened the extraction were eliminated before they could acquire targets. Morrison's team began their movement to the landing zone under covering fire from both the helicopter and their unknown protector. However, as they moved, Taliban fighters made desperate attempts to prevent their escape. Enemy forces charged across open ground, accepting massive casualties in hopes of reaching the extraction site. The coordination between the helicopter crew and the unknown sniper was remarkable, suggesting either exceptional situational awareness or some form of communication that Morrison's team wasn't aware of. Threats to the aircraft were eliminated with precision fire, while the helicopter's weapons systems engaged area targets and provided suppressive fire. Rodriguez was first aboard the extraction helicopter, followed by Chun and Kowalski. Washington maintained his machine gun position until the last possible moment, providing covering fire while his teammates embarked. Murphy served as rear guard, using his designated marksman rifle to engage targets of opportunity during the extraction. As Morrison prepared to board the aircraft, he took one final look at the ridgeline where he believed their mysterious protector was positioned. For just a moment, he thought he caught a glimpse of movement among the rocks, but it could easily have been shadow or imagination. Whoever had saved their lives had remained as invisible and mysterious as when their support first began. The helicopter lifted off under continued enemy fire, but the precision shots from the unknown sniper continued to protect their departure. Taliban fighters attempting to engage the aircraft with small arms fire found themselves targeted immediately, disrupting their aim and preventing effective engagement of the departing helicopter. As they gained altitude and distance from the landing zone, Morrison could see the full scope of the battlefield they were leaving behind. Taliban casualties were scattered across the ridges and valleys, testament to the devastating effectiveness of their mysterious ally. However, despite extensive observation, he could detect no sign of the sniper who had saved their lives. The flight back to their forward operating base provided time for Morrison to consider the implications of what had occurred. Standard operational procedures required detailed debriefings and reports on all aspects of the mission. However, how could he report assistance from an unknown sniper whose identity, nationality, and motivation remained completely mysterious? Chin had managed to gather some intelligence during their withdrawal, including photographs and coordinates of the Taliban staging area they had discovered. However, the most significant aspect of their mission had been their survival against overwhelming odds, and that survival had depended entirely on intervention from a source they couldn't identify or explain. As the helicopter approached their base, Morrison realized that their mission had raised more questions than it had answered. Who was their mysterious protector? How had this person known about their situation? Why had they chosen to intervene? And, perhaps most importantly, could they be contacted and potentially recruited as an intelligence asset? The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of the Afghan mountains as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison checked his gear one final time. His SEAL team had been deployed to this remote valley for what intelligence reports described as a routine reconnaissance mission. The target was a suspected Taliban weapons cache hidden somewhere in the maze of caves that dotted the mountainside. Morrison's team consisted of 6 highly trained operators, each a specialist in their field. Petty Officer First Class Danny Rodriguez served as the team's medic and explosives expert. Chief Petty Officer Mike Chun handled communications and electronic warfare. Petty Officer Second Class Tommy Washington was their heavy weapons specialist. Petty Officer First Class Alex Kowalski managed demolitions and breaching. Finally, Petty Officer Second Class Ryan Murphy rounded out the team as their designated marksman and scout. The intelligence briefing had been straightforward. Local sources reported unusual activity in the area, with multiple sightings of armed men moving supplies into the mountain caves. Satellite imagery confirmed the presence of makeshift structures and what appeared to be weapons storage facilities. The mission parameters were clear: infiltrate, gather intelligence, and, if possible, neutralize the threat. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was the growing unease among local intelligence assets. Several Afghan informants had gone silent in recent weeks, and there were whispers of a larger Taliban presence in the region than initially reported. Morrison had voiced these concerns to his commanding officer, but orders remained unchanged. The mission was classified as medium risk with standard rules of engagement. As the team moved through the valley in the pre-dawn darkness, Morrison felt the familiar weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Each of these men had families waiting for them back home. Rodriguez had twin daughters who had just started kindergarten. Chin's wife was expecting their first child in 3 months. Washington's son was graduating high school next spring. These weren't just statistics or personnel files to Morrison. They were his brothers, and their safety was his primary concern. The terrain proved more challenging than the aerial reconnaissance had suggested. Loose shale made silent movement difficult, and the narrow paths between massive boulders forced the team into single-file formation. Murphy, taking point as the team scout, used hand signals to communicate obstacles and direction changes. His training as a designated marksman made him particularly valuable for spotting potential threats at distance. 3 hours into their approach, Murphy raised his fist, signaling the team to freeze. Through his scope, he had spotted movement on a ridge approximately 800 meters to their northeast. Morrison crawled forward to Murphy's position and took the offered binoculars. 2 figures were clearly visible, both carrying AK-47 rifles and wearing traditional Afghan clothing. They appeared to be sentries, positioned to watch the main approach to the cave system. Morrison made the tactical decision to alter their route, leading the team through a more circuitous path that would bring them to the target from an unexpected direction. This decision would later prove crucial to their survival, though at the time it seemed like standard operational procedure. The detour added 2 hours to their timeline, but it allowed them to approach the cave system from the south, where natural rock formations provided better concealment. As they drew closer to their objective, the scope of the enemy presence became increasingly apparent. What intelligence had described as a small weapons cache was clearly something much larger. Through their scopes and binoculars, the SEALs observed a complex network of caves connected by well-worn paths. Guard positions were established at multiple points, with overlapping fields of fire that would make any direct assault extremely costly. Morrison counted at least 20 enemy fighters visible from their position, with the certainty that many more remained hidden within the cave system. Chen attempted to establish communication with their command post, but the mountainous terrain interfered with radio transmission. The team's satellite communication equipment was experiencing technical difficulties, possibly due to electromagnetic interference from unknown sources. This left them temporarily isolated and unable to request immediate backup or air support. Despite the communication problems, Morrison decided to proceed with the intelligence gathering portion of their mission. Using long-range optics, the team began documenting the enemy positions, weapons, and activities. Rodriguez sketched detailed maps of the visible fortifications, while Washington identified crew-served weapons and their positions. What they discovered exceeded their worst expectations. The cave system wasn't just a weapons cache. It was a major staging area for Taliban operations. Crates of ammunition, mortar rounds, and rocket-propelled grenades were clearly visible being moved between caves. Several technicals, Pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns were parked in concealed positions. Most concerning was the presence of what appeared to be foreign fighters, possibly Al-Qaeda operatives, identifiable by their different clothing and equipment. As the team continued their surveillance, Murphy noticed movement in their rear. Using his rifle scope, he identified at least a dozen armed men moving along the path they had originally intended to take. The enemy had detected their presence and was attempting to surround them. Worse, additional fighters were moving to block their planned escape route. Morrison faced a critical decision. They could attempt to withdraw immediately, hoping to break contact before being completely surrounded. Alternatively, they could continue gathering intelligence while the enemy was still unaware of their exact position. The mission's success depended on the quality of intelligence they could gather, but their survival depended on timing their withdrawal perfectly. The lieutenant commander chose to continue the surveillance for 30 more minutes, gathering as much actionable intelligence as possible. This decision demonstrated the calculated risks that special operations forces regularly face, balancing mission success against personal safety. During those crucial 30 minutes, the team documented the locations of ammunition storage areas, identified key personnel who appeared to be leaders, and mapped the defensive positions surrounding the cave complex. Chun managed to get partial radio contact with their base, transmitting compressed intelligence data in short bursts to avoid detection. However, their time was running out faster than anticipated. Murphy reported that the enemy forces had completed their encirclement and were beginning to tighten the noose. The SEALs found themselves surrounded by an estimated 50 to 60 enemy fighters, with reinforcements still arriving. Morrison gathered his team and explained their situation with characteristic calm professionalism. They were outnumbered roughly 10 to 1, with limited ammunition and no immediate prospect of backup. Their only advantages were superior training, better equipment, and the element of surprise regarding their exact position. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would move to a more defensible position on higher ground, establish overlapping fields of fire, and attempt to break contact during the confusion of their initial engagement. If they could inflict enough casualties quickly, they might create an opportunity to withdraw through a temporarily weakened section of the enemy perimeter. Rodriguez distributed ammunition, ensuring each team member had maximum possible firepower for the engagement ahead. Washington positioned his M249 light machine gun to provide suppressive fire during their movement to the high ground. Chun worked frantically to re-establish communication with their base, hoping to coordinate air support or artillery assistance. The team's movement to their new position was executed with textbook precision. Years of training and multiple combat deployments had forged them into a cohesive unit that could operate effectively under extreme pressure. Each man knew his role and trusted his teammates implicitly. Their new position offered better fields of fire, but also made them more visible to enemy observation. Morrison knew they had perhaps minutes before being spotted and engaged. He used those precious minutes to position his men for maximum effectiveness, ensuring that each person understood the withdrawal plan and rally points. Murphy, with his designated marksman rifle, took position where he could observe the largest concentration of enemy forces. His role would be critical in the opening moments of the engagement, eliminating key targets and disrupting enemy coordination. Rodriguez and Kowalski prepared to provide covering fire for any wounded teammates. Chun continued his efforts to establish communication while Washington readied his machine gun for sustained fire. The first enemy fighter appeared on the ridge below them at exactly 0847 hours. Morrison held his fire, hoping the team's position might remain undetected a few minutes longer. However, the Taliban fighter's alert posture and the way he was scanning their area indicated that their general location had been compromised. Within moments, additional enemy fighters appeared, and Morrison knew that engagement was inevitable. He gave the signal to engage, and Murphy's first shot dropped the lead Taliban fighter instantly. The precision of that shot would prove to be prophetic of what was to come. The firefight erupted with devastating intensity. Washington's machine gun hammered out suppressive fire while the rest of the team engaged targets of opportunity. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming, with automatic weapons fire coming from multiple directions simultaneously. Despite their superior training and initial tactical advantage, the mathematics of the situation were unforgiving. 6 SEALs, no matter how skilled, could not indefinitely hold off 60 determined enemy fighters. Morrison knew that without outside intervention, they would eventually be overrun through sheer weight of numbers. As the firefight intensified, ammunition consumption became a critical concern. Each shot had to count, and Morrison found himself making the harsh calculations that define combat leadership. How long could they maintain their rate of fire? When should they begin their withdrawal? How many casualties could they inflict before being forced to move? The enemy began coordinating their assault, with groups attempting to flank the SEAL position from multiple directions. Morrison's team found themselves engaging targets on 3 sides, stretching their defensive perimeter to the breaking point. It became clear that their current position, while offering good fields of fire, was becoming untenable. Then, Murphy made an observation that would change everything. Through his scope, he had noticed muzzle flashes from a position approximately 1,200 meters away, while behind enemy lines. Someone was taking precision shots at Taliban fighters, and those shots were having a dramatic effect on enemy coordination and morale. At first, Morrison thought it might be another NATO unit operating in the area. However, the shots were coming from a location that would be impossible for friendly forces to reach without being detected. The precision and frequency of the shots suggested a single marksman with exceptional skill and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Rodriguez noticed it too when he observed enemy fighters suddenly dropping without any obvious cause. The mysterious sniper was systematically eliminating Taliban leaders and heavy weapons operators, creating gaps in the enemy's coordinated assault. Machine gun positions that had been suppressing the SEALs suddenly fell silent as their operators were neutralized by precise, long-range shots. As the engagement continued, the presence of the unknown sniper became increasingly apparent. Enemy fighters began showing signs of confusion and fear, uncertain where the deadly accurate fire was originating. Several attempts to establish new firing positions were immediately countered by precise shots that eliminated key personnel. Morrison began to suspect that their mysterious benefactor might be a local fighter with reason to oppose the Taliban presence in the area. Afghanistan's complex tribal politics often created situations where enemy of my enemy became temporary allies. However, the level of marksmanship being displayed suggested military training far beyond what most local fighters possessed. The tactical situation was shifting in their favor, but Morrison knew they couldn't rely indefinitely on their unknown ally. The team needed to use this opportunity to begin their withdrawal while the enemy was disrupted and demoralized. However, timing would be critical. Move too early, and they might waste the advantage. Move too late, and the enemy might adapt to the sniper threat and resume their coordinated assault. Shin finally managed to establish solid radio contact with their base and was able to request immediate air support. However, the closest available aircraft were still 45 minutes out, far too long given their current ammunition levels and the intensity of the engagement. The mysterious sniper continued to operate with devastating effectiveness, each shot carefully chosen for maximum psychological and tactical impact. Taliban fighters who had been advancing aggressively now hesitated before moving, uncertain whether they were being observed through a rifle scope. This hesitation created the openings that Morrison's team needed to begin considering their withdrawal. Washington's machine gun ammunition was running dangerously low, and several team members were down to their final magazines. The mathematical reality of sustained combat was asserting itself, regardless of training or determination. Morrison knew that their window for successful withdrawal was rapidly closing. However, the unknown sniper seemed to anticipate their needs, systematically eliminating threats along their planned withdrawal route. Enemy positions that would have made movement impossible were neutralized with precision shots that demonstrated not just exceptional marksmanship, but tactical understanding of the SEAL's situation. As the first part of this engagement drew to a close, Morrison found himself questioning who their mysterious ally might be. The level of support they were receiving went beyond opportunistic shooting. Someone was deliberately and systematically helping them survive against overwhelming odds, and that someone possessed skills that few people in Afghanistan could match.